The sun was just beginning its slow descent behind the jagged hills of the frontier town, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. The air smelled faintly of hay, horse sweat, and the faint tang of whiskey from the saloon at the edge of town. In a small, dilapidated cabin on the outskirts, Clara sat on a worn wooden stool, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the hem of her dress. Her father, a man whose face was etched with both age and regret, stumbled across the floor, reeking of liquor. Clara had grown up in hardship, learning early that her father's love was often clouded by the bottle he clutched day and night. But tonight, desperation had driven him to a decision that would change Clara's life forever. He called over a stranger, rough, unshaven, and with a hardened look that made Clara's stomach twist into knots. The man offered a bottle of whiskey, and without a moment's hesitation, her father handed Clara over, treating her more like an object than a child. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, but she didn't scream. Perhaps she had learned that shouting brought only anger or indifference. Her heart pounded with fear, and she tried to shrink into herself, wishing she could vanish. Yet, as the stranger reached for her, a calm but firm voice cut through the tense air. "I'll pay double to save her." Clara looked up to see a cowboy standing at the edge of the cabin, his wide-brimmed hat tilted slightly, shadowing eyes that were steady and kind. His leather jacket and worn boots marked him as someone who had seen the hardships of the frontier. Yet there was a warmth in his demeanor that immediately set Clara slightly at ease. His words were simple, but they carried weight. This man, a complete stranger, was willing to give more than a bottle of whiskey to protect her. Her father scoffed, slurring his words, but the cowboy was resolute. Without another word, he handed over enough coins to cover the man's bottle and more. The stranger, seeing opportunity, counted the coins and smirked, finally stepping back. Clara's father swayed, muttering something incomprehensible before retreating into the shadows of his cabin. For a moment, Clara simply stared at the cowboy, unsure whether to trust him. He knelt slightly to be at her eye level, speaking gently. "My name's Ethan. You're safe now, I promise." His voice wasn't loud or commanding. It was steady, reassuring, almost like the calm in the eye of a storm. Clara nodded, the tight knot of fear in her chest loosening just a little. Ethan guided her out of the cabin and onto the sunlit main street. The golden light of the setting sun fell across their path, making even the dusty road seem warm and inviting. Horses clopped in the distance, and townsfolk paused to glance at the pair, but Ethan kept Clara close, moving with purpose toward the outskirts of town. With each step, Clara's anxiety mingled with a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. Perhaps for the first time, someone truly cared about her well-being. As they walked, Ethan spoke softly, filling the silence with words of reassurance. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'll take care of you. You'll see there's a life out here waiting for you, one where you can be safe, where no one will treat you as a possession." Clara listened, feeling her fear slowly replaced by curiosity. She noticed the way he glanced toward the horizon, as if already imagining a future that included her. The journey from the town to Ethan's ranch was quiet but filled with subtle moments of connection. Clara kept her eyes on the ground at first, but when she saw Ethan gently pat the flank of his horse or the way he spoke to the animals in the fields, she felt a sense of calm. Here, in this wide-open land, maybe she could breathe. Maybe she could be more than what her father had allowed her to be. As they reached the edge of the ranch, the first stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky. Clara's heart, once heavy with fear and despair, felt lighter. The world beyond the dusty town, with its open fields and golden sunset, hinted at a new beginning. Ethan turned to her and offered his hand. "Come on, Clara, let's start fresh." And for the first time in her young life, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who would protect her, not for a bottle of whiskey, but because he truly cared. Here's a fully safe, cinematic 700-word explanation for Part 2, The Journey Begins. Part 2, The Journey Begins. The morning sun stretched golden fingers across the rolling plains as Ethan led Clara along the dusty trail away from the town that had held so much fear for her. The horizon seemed endless, a vast expanse of fields and low hills that promised freedom and a life untouched by cruelty. Clara walked carefully, clutching her small bundle of belongings, her eyes wide at the open sky. The air was fresh here, scented with wildflowers and the faint warmth of early sunlight. For the first time in months, she breathed without the knot of terror clutching at her chest. Ethan walked beside her, his steps steady and calm. He said little at first, letting Clara take in the wide-open world. Occasionally, he pointed out landmarks, a lone oak tree with sprawling branches, a cluster of rocks where deer sometimes grazed, and the distant shimmer of a creek. His tone was gentle, like a guide leading her not just through the land but toward safety and trust. Clara listened quietly, still unsure how to feel. She had been betrayed before by the one person who should have loved her most, but Ethan's presence carried a certainty she had never known. The path to the ranch was long, and the physical effort of walking gave Clara little time to dwell on her fears. She noticed small details, the way a bird flitted from fence post to fence post, the soft hum of insects in the morning heat, and the occasional distant bark of a ranch dog. Ethan encouraged her to speak, asking simple questions about the life she had known, what she liked, and what scared her. At first, Clara's answers were short and guarded, but she began to feel that this stranger was genuinely interested in her. Not in controlling or judging her. As they walked, Ethan explained the basics of ranch life, painting a picture of what awaited her, the chores, the animals, and the freedom to explore safely under his watchful eye. Clara felt a small spark of excitement at the thought of a home where she would be treated with respect. Her heart, still cautious, allowed herself to imagine mornings feeding chickens, afternoons exploring hillsides, and evenings by a warm fire. The journey wasn't without challenges. At one point they had to cross a shallow creek where Clara hesitated, unsure of her footing. The water glinted under the sun, deceptively calm, yet her fear of slipping nearly froze her in place. Ethan knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I'm right here," he said simply. "One step at a time." With his encouragement, Clara crossed safely, feeling a quiet surge of confidence she hadn't experienced in years. By midday, they arrived at the rancha, modest but well-kept homestead surrounded by sprawling fields. Chickens wandered freely, horses grazed lazily, and the scent of hay and earth welcomed them. Clara's eyes widened as she took in the life that could now be hers. Ethan gave her a gentle smile. "This is your new home, Clara. Safe, quiet, and yours to grow in." Clara felt a mix of relief and nervousness. It was one thing to escape danger. It was another to settle into a life she had never imagined. She looked at the fences, the barn, and the grazing horses. For the first time, the world seemed large, open, and full of possibility. She realized that here she could learn, play, and even dream without fear. Ethan showed her the small cabin she would stay in, cozy and sunlit, with a window that looked out over the fields. He handed her a simple bundle of clothes and a few essentials. "Take your time," he said kindly. "Settle in. There's no rush. You're safe here." Clara nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Words failed her, but the gesture spoke volumes. For the first time in a long while, someone cared about her well-being, not as a possession, but as a person. That evening, as the sky turned a soft pink and gold, Clara sat outside the cabin, watching the sun dip below the hills. Ethan worked nearby, tending to the horses and preparing a simple meal. Clara's hands were busy with small tasks, but her mind wandered, imagining the days ahead. A sense of peace settled over her, fragile but real. She knew she had a long way to go, but with Ethan's guidance, she could start to rebuild her trust and confidence. The journey from the town to the ranch had been more than a physical passage. It had been the first step into a world where Clara could feel safe, valued, and free. And as night fell, the stars blinking gently above, she allowed herself to hope. Perhaps this cowboy, this stranger who had offered more than coins, could help her discover a life filled with trust, care, and the possibility of happiness. Here's a fully safe cinematic 700-word explanation for Part 3, Learning to Trust. Part 3, Learning to Trust. The ranch had settled into a quiet rhythm by the second day. The soft clucking of chickens mingled with the occasional neigh of a horse, and the air was sweet with the scent of hay and earth warmed by the sun. Clara rose early, hesitant but curious, peering out of her cabin window at the vast expanse that had once seemed so foreign. The hills rolled gently under the morning light, and the sky stretched wide and endless, a stark contrast to the cramped, dim cabin she had left behind. Ethan was already outside, tending to the animals. His movements were calm, methodical, and practiced, and Clara found herself watching him with a mix of fascination and caution. The way he spoke softly to the horses, the way he gently guided the chickens back to their coop, each gesture seemed infused with care and respect. For the first time, she realized that someone could treat creatures, and perhaps even people, with gentleness and patience. Tentatively, Clara stepped outside, her small bundle of courage in tow. Ethan glanced over his shoulder and smiled. "Morning," he said warmly. "Want to help me with the animals today?" Clara hesitated. Memories of her father's harshness made her instinctively shrink back. Yet there was something about Ethan's steady presence that felt safe, even reassuring. She nodded, and he beckoned her closer. "Start with the chickens. They like a soft hand and a calm voice." At first, Clara was clumsy. Chickens darted under her fingers, feathers brushing her palms, and she stumbled over the barn steps. But Ethan's patient encouragement never wavered. "Easy," he said gently. "They're just curious like you. Take your time." Slowly, she began to mimic his calm gestures, her own anxiety easing with each successful movement. As the morning sun rose higher, Clara moved from the chickens to the horses, each step a test of her growing confidence. Ethan showed her how to groom them, how to speak to them with gentle words and steady hands. When Clara hesitated before approaching a large, brown mare, Ethan knelt beside her. "She won't hurt you. She can feel your heart. Just be calm and kind." Clara's hands shook slightly as she reached out, but the mare nuzzled her softly, as if acknowledging the tentative trust between them. A spark of pride lit up Clara's face. She could do this. She could be brave, dubbed between chores. Ethan shared stories of the land, the animals, and the simple joys of ranch life. He spoke not as a teacher correcting a pupil, but as a companion sharing wisdom. Clara listened, captivated by the tales of starry nights, open prairies, and the quiet dignity of life on the ranch. For the first time, she felt that she could belong somewhere, that the world could be a place of kindness rather than fear. By midday, they sat beneath a wide oak tree, the sun filtering through leaves to create a mosaic of light and shadow. Clara dared to speak of her past, of the fear and hurt her father's choices had caused. Ethan listened silently, nodding occasionally, never interrupting or judging. His calm presence created a space where Clara's voice felt safe. As the words spilled out, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "You've been very brave," Ethan said softly when she paused, wiping a stray tear. "And remember, being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means trying anyway." Clara looked at him, a faint smile forming. His words were simple, but they carried a truth she had never known. Courage could coexist with fear, and trust could grow even in someone's broken heart. The afternoon passed with more chores, each task a gentle lesson in patience, respect, and care. Clara began to notice small changes within herself. She laughed when a playful goat nudged her. She felt pride when she completed a task without Ethan's help. And she realized that her hands, once clumsy and uncertain, were learning to work confidently and kindly. By evening, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Clara sat outside the cabin, watching the shadows stretch across the fields. She felt a sense of peace she had never known, a quiet confidence that came from small victories, gentle guidance, and the simple kindness of someone who had chosen to protect her without expectation. Ethan approached with a bucket of fresh water, setting it down beside her. "You did well today," he said simply. Clara nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time, she began to believe that she could trust again, that she could be safe, valued, and cared for. And in the quiet of that evening, with the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky, Clara allowed herself to hope. Perhaps, she thought, this life on the ranch, with Ethan's steady guidance and gentle care, could be a place where fear no longer dictated her every step, and trust could slowly, carefully. Grow, the morning began like any other, with soft sunlight spilling across the fields and the quiet sounds of the ranch waking to a new day. Clara moved with a growing confidence, feeding the chickens and gathering fresh eggs, while Ethan checked the fences and tended to the horses. The rhythm of the ranch was soothing, a gentle contrast to the chaos and fear she had left behind in town. By mid-afternoon, however, the sky began to change. Clouds rolled in quickly, thick and gray, casting long shadows over the fields. A chill wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. Clara paused, glancing toward the distant hills with a flicker of unease. She had spent so many days hiding from dangers she could not control, and the sudden shift in the sky made her heart beat faster. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "Looks like a storm's coming," he said calmly, his voice steady. "We'll need to secure the animals and make sure everything's tied down." Clara nodded, trusting his judgment. Though the wind tugged at her dress and tousled her hair, there was no panic in Ethan's movements, only deliberate, careful action. Together, they moved through the ranch. Clara held the reins of a horse while Ethan tightened the harnesses and checked the gates. She felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly with each task, her hands busy, her mind focused. Ethan spoke in quiet, reassuring tones, guiding her without rushing or scolding. "The storm can't hurt us if we're prepared. Nature is strong, but we can work with it, not against it," he explained, a lesson in both caution and calm. As the first drops of rain fell, Clara felt the cool splash on her skin. She shivered, but Ethan draped a blanket over her shoulders. "It's just rain," he said with a reassuring smile. "Nothing to fear. We'll get through it together." The words, so simple, reminded her that she no longer faced the world alone. She had someone by her side, steady and reliable, willing to guide her safely through the storm. The rain grew heavier, drumming on the rooftops and soaking the earth. Clara and Ethan worked side by side, securing the barn doors and gathering any loose equipment. The sound of the storm outside was loud, almost overwhelming, but inside their shared space, a sense of calm and purpose prevailed. Clara began to notice that she could act decisively, even when the world around her seemed chaotic. The fear that had once frozen her was now tempered by experience and trust. At one point, a gust of wind caught a stack of hay, sending it tumbling dangerously. Clara instinctively rushed forward, heart pounding, to help Ethan steady it. Together they secured the hay, laughing softly at the near mishap. Clara felt a thrill of accomplishment. For the first time, she realized that challenges no longer had to paralyze her. With guidance and courage, she could meet them head-on. After the storm passed, the air smelled fresh and clean, and the ranch glistened under the renewed sunlight. Puddles reflected the soft colors of the sky, and the animals settled back into their routines. Clara and Ethan stood together, surveying their work. There was a quiet pride in the way Clara looked around. The fences were secure, the barn safe, and she had played a part in it all. Ethan turned to her, his expression gentle. "You did well today. Storms aren't just about rain, they're about learning how to face fear and still act with courage." Clara smiled, a sense of satisfaction and newfound strength warming her chest. She realized that the storm had been more than a test of physical endurance, it had been a lesson in trust, resilience, and teamwork. That evening, as the last light of day touched the hills and the wet fields glistened in gold, Clara sat quietly outside the cabin, listening to the soft drip of water from the roof. She felt a calm she had never known before, a deep sense of connection to both the land and the man who had saved her. The storm had reminded her that life could be unpredictable, but that she could face it with courage and with someone she trusted by her side. For the first time, Clara understood that safety was not just the absence of danger, but the presence of someone who believed in her, guided her, and offered steadiness when the world felt uncertain. And as the stars began to appear in the night sky, twinkling over the glistening fields, she allowed herself to hope for a life where trust and courage could grow together, where she could learn to face challenges without fear, and where she could finally belong. Morning light spilled across the ranch like a golden blanket, painting the fields, fences, and grazing horses in warm hues. Clara awoke to the soft sounds of birds and the distant clatter of Ethan preparing for the day. Unlike before, she no longer hesitated to step outside. She had begun to feel that the ranch was a place where she could belong, where her actions mattered, and where her heart could begin to heal. Ethan was already saddling a horse, a gentle, brown Mari with calm eyes. "Morning, Clara," he greeted with a nod. "Today, I thought you might try riding. Only if you're ready, of course." Clara's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. The idea of climbing onto a horse, balancing atop something so much larger than herself, made her anxious, but she remembered the courage she had discovered in the storm. She nodded, willing herself to try. Ethan guided her to the horse, showing her how to adjust the reins and settle onto the saddle. His voice was calm, reassuring, each instruction gentle but precise. "The horse can feel your fear," he said softly. "Stay calm, speak softly, trust her as she trusts you." Clara's hands shook slightly, but she mirrored his movements, carefully following his lead. The Murray shifted beneath her, sensing her hesitation, and Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her first ride was tentative. Each step of the horse sent ripples through her body, but she kept her focus on Ethan's steady presence and instructions. He walked beside her, holding the reins until she found her balance. Slowly, Clara's confidence grew. She felt the wind brushing her face, smelled the sweet scent of wild grass, and for the first time, she felt a sense of exhilaration that wasn't tied to fear. She was discovering that courage didn't mean the absence of fear, it meant acting. Despite it, after the ride, Ethan led Clara to the hills surrounding the ranch. "Let's explore a little," he suggested. Clara hesitated, looking at the uneven terrain and imagining herself stumbling or losing her footing. But Ethan's encouraging smile gave her the courage to follow. Together, they climbed the gentle slopes, learning to navigate rocks and small streams. Each small challenge became a lesson in trust and persistence. Clara began to see that she could rely on her own strength, guided by the steady support of someone who believed in her. Along the way, they discovered a hidden grove of wildflowers, bathed in sunlight. Clara's eyes widened at the vibrant colors, the delicate petals, and the soft hum of bees. "Look at this," Ethan said, kneeling beside her. "Sometimes courage isn't about facing danger, it's about opening your eyes to the beauty in the world, even when you've known fear." Clara knelt, gently touching the flowers, feeling a wave of wonder and calm wash over her. The afternoon was spent helping Ethan with various ranch tasks, mending a fence, feeding the animals, and clearing a small creek that had begun to overflow. Each task was a test of her growing independence and confidence. Ethan provided guidance without taking control, allowing Clara to make choices and solve problems on her own. With every success, her sense of self-worth grew. She began to believe that she could navigate challenges and take care of herself. Even outside Ethan's immediate presence. By evening, they returned to the ranch, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the fields. Clara paused atop a small hill, looking down at the ranch she now called home. Her heart swelled with a quiet pride. She had faced her fears, tried new things, and discovered that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. Ethan approached, offering her a simple nod of approval. "You did very well today, Clara," he said. "Courage isn't just about facing storms or dangers, it's about taking small steps every day, learning to trust yourself, and believing that you can rise to challenges." Clara smiled, feeling the truth in his words. She realized that courage wasn't something she needed to find all at once, it was built gradually, through action, persistence, and the support of someone who cared. As night fell, the stars emerging one by one in the clear sky, Clara sat quietly outside her cabin, feeling the gentle breeze against her face. The land stretched endlessly around her, a world full of possibility. For the first time, she felt the thrill of her own strength and the joy of new beginnings. Courage had taken root in her heart, and with it came hope, resilience, and the promise that she could face whatever lay ahead. And in that quiet moment, Clara understood something profound. Life on the ranch, with its open skies, challenges, and steady companionship, could teach her to be brave, not in spite of fear, but because she had learned how to trust herself and the people who truly cared for her. days on the ranch had settled into a comfortable rhythm, each one teaching Clara more about herself and the world she now called home. The fields stretched wide, bathed in sunlight, and the air smelled of earth, hay, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. The animals moved calmly around her, no longer strangers but companions whose trust she had earned. Yet the most important change was not in the land or the creatures, but in the quiet, steady bond forming between Clara and Ethan. That morning, Ethan had asked her to help with the garden, a small patch of earth near the cabin where he grew vegetables and herbs. Clara knelt in the soil, fingers stained with dirt, and carefully planted seeds while Ethan worked beside her, guiding her gently when needed but allowing her space to learn. Their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter at small mishaps. A stubborn weed, a wayward chicken wandering through the rows, or Clara accidentally dropping a handful of seeds. Each laugh felt freeing, a release of the tension that had shadowed her life for so long. After the work was done, they sat beneath a large oak tree, the afternoon sun casting dappled shadows across their faces. Ethan pulled a small harmonica from his pocket and played a few soft notes, the music drifting through the warm breeze. Clara listened, her eyes tracing the horizon where the hills met the sky. She felt a sense of calm she had never known, a quiet joy in the company of someone who had proven trustworthy and kind. The world felt safe for the first time in years. Ethan spoke softly about his life on the ranch, sharing memories of his childhood, of sunsets watched over open fields, and of the lessons he had learned from the land and its animals. Clara listened intently, realizing that he was not just teaching her practical skills but also sharing a philosophy of life, one that valued patience, respect, and quiet strength. His words were not commands or lessons. They were gentle guidance, spoken with care and trust. By late afternoon, Clara felt a sudden urge to explore. "Can I go to the creek?" she asked, pointing toward a narrow stream that twisted through the far end of the ranch. Ethan nodded. "Of course. Just stay on the path and don't go too far. I'll watch from here." Clara felt a small thrill of independence, the first real taste of freedom she had ever known. She ran lightly down the path, feeling the soft grass beneath her feet and the sun on her face. The sound of water over smooth stones was like music, and she allowed herself to laugh, a pure, carefree sound that surprised even her. When she returned, Ethan greeted her with a warm smile. "See, you're learning to navigate the world on your own while still being mindful. That's courage and wisdom, Clara." She felt pride swell within her, a sense of accomplishment that came from stepping beyond fear and embracing the possibilities. Around her as evening fell, they prepared a simple meal together. Clara chopped vegetables while Ethan cooked over the fire, and the routine felt comforting, almost like a dance. They ate in companionable silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the soft calls of animals settling for the night. Afterward, they sat side by side, watching the stars begin to appear in the deepening sky. "I never thought I'd see a place like this," Clara admitted quietly. "Somewhere I could feel safe and happy." Ethan glanced at her, his expression soft. "You deserve it, Clara. You've earned it, not just the safety, but the joy of knowing you are valued, respected, and capable. And you're not alone anymore." The quiet moments stretched into night, and Clara realized how deeply she had come to trust Ethan. He was no longer just the man who had saved her. He had become a steady presence in her life, a guide, a teacher, and in time a friend she could rely on completely. She felt a connection that was gentle but unbreakable, a bond built on trust, care, and shared experience. As she climbed into her cabin that night, the cool breeze brushing against her face, Clara felt something new bloom. Inside her, a deep sense of belonging. She was learning that love and connection were not only possible but natural when nurtured with patience and respect. The bond she shared with Ethan was a quiet, powerful force, strengthening her courage, confidence, and hope for the future. For the first time, Clara understood that trust was not fragile. It could grow, deepen, and become the foundation of a life filled with security, joy, and the freedom to be herself. And as she drifted to sleep, the stars twinkling over the peaceful ranch. She knew that this bond, steady, kind, and unwavering, would guide her through every challenge yet to come. The morning sun painted the ranch in soft golden hues, but Clara felt a knot of unease in her chest. She had grown confident and joyful in her new life, yet the past had a way of creeping in unexpectedly. As she tended the garden, a familiar clatter echoed from the distant road. She froze, recognizing the staggered gait and unsteady voice of someone she had hoped never to see again. Her father. He had changed little. Still clutching the bottle that had caused so much pain, his eyes bloodshot and unsteady. Clara's stomach twisted. Memories of fear, neglect, and betrayal rose to the surface. For a long moment she debated fleeing, hiding in the safety of the cabin or the fields. But then she thought of Ethan, of the courage and trust she had cultivated over weeks on the ranch, and she realized she no longer needed to shrink from the past. Ethan noticed her hesitation and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face him alone," he said, his voice calm and steady. "But you have the strength to do this. I'll be right here." Clara drew a deep breath, feeling the grounding presence of the man who had become her protector and friend. When her father stumbled closer, he mumbled incoherent apologies, his words slurred by alcohol. Clara looked at him, her heart still heavy but her spirit unshaken. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said firmly, her voice steady. "What you did, it was wrong. I'm safe now, and I won't let fear control me again." Her father's gaze shifted, confusion and a flicker of guilt in his eyes. For the first time, Clara saw that his power over her had ended. She no longer needed his approval or his acceptance. Instead, she had something far more valuable, the knowledge that she could stand tall, face challenges, and protect herself. Ethan stepped forward, giving her father a respectful nod but making it clear that the boundaries had changed. "Clara is safe now," he said simply. "She belongs here, and she's no longer in danger. She's stronger than anyone gives her credit for." Clara felt a surge of pride. She realized that the strength she had gained on the ranch, the lessons in trust, courage, and resilience had prepared her for this very moment. She could confront her past without fear, and she could claim her life on her own terms. Her father's remorse, though faint, could not undo the choices he had made, but Clara's courage had become undeniable. After a tense moment, her father muttered something about trying to do better, then turned and shuffled back down the road. Leaving Clara and Ethan alone? She exhaled, a mixture of relief and empowerment washing over her. For the first time, she felt free, not just from fear, but from the shadows of her past. She had faced the man who had once held control over her and realized that she now held the power over her own life. Ethan gently took her hand, offering reassurance without diminishing her accomplishment. "You were brave," he said softly. "You've grown so much, Clara. Today proves that courage isn't just about what you face outside, it's about confronting what you've carried inside." Clara nodded, feeling the truth of his words sink deeply into her heart. They walked together back toward the ranch, the morning sun warming their backs. Clara's thoughts wandered not to anger or resentment, but to the strength she had discovered in herself. She realized that the journey from fear to trust, from doubt to courage, had led her to this moment of empowerment. She had survived hardship, embraced the kindness of others, and now stood tall, ready to embrace her life fully. As the ranch stretched out before her, the fields, the animals, and the cabin that had become her sanctuary, Clara allowed herself a quiet smile. The past had come to visit, but it could no longer define her. She was free, safe, and capable. And as she glanced at Ethan, who had supported her every step of the way, she felt gratitude, trust, and a deep sense of belonging. That evening, Clara sat outside her cabin, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky glowed with shades of pink and gold, a reflection of the new life she had claimed for herself. For the first time, the past felt like a shadow that could not touch her strength, courage, or the bright future she now had the power to shape. She was ready to embrace every day with confidence, trust, and hope. The dawn arrived softly over the ranch, painting the fields and hills in hues of gold and rose. Clara stepped outside her cabin, the cool morning breeze brushing her face. carrying the fresh scent of grass, wildflowers, and the quiet promise of a new day. She had grown so much in the weeks since Ethan had rescued her from the life of fear and uncertainty. Each day had brought lessons in courage, trust, and self-belief, and now, standing in the warmth of morning light, she felt a quiet joy she had never known. Ethan was already outside, tending to the horses, his calm presence a comforting anchor in the vast openness of the ranch. He looked up as Clara approached and offered a simple smile. "Morning," he said. "Ready to start the day?" Clara nodded, her own smile reflecting the happiness and confidence that had taken root within her. She realized that life on the ranch had given her more than safety. It had given her independence, strength, and a sense of belonging. They spent the morning together caring for the animals, feeding the chickens and grooming the horses. Clara moved with confidence, her actions steady and deliberate. Where once she had been hesitant, unsure of herself, she now navigated the chores with ease and care. Ethan guided her with gentle words and encouragement, never taking control but always supporting her when she needed it. Their partnership had evolved into a quiet, unspoken bond built on trust, respect, and shared experience. After the chores, they walked together to the rolling hills behind the ranch, a place that had become Clara's favorite spot for reflection. The sun rose higher, illuminating the landscape in golden light. Clara paused atop a small hill, gazing at the fields, the cabin, and the animals below. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude. She had faced fear, learned to trust, and discovered courage she never knew she possessed. The world felt expansive and full of possibility, a place where she could dream and grow without the shadows of the past holding her back. Ethan stood beside her, observing her quiet contemplation. "You've come a long way," he said softly. "From the moment I met you, you've shown strength and courage. And now you have a life where you can be yourself, safe and free?" Clara turned to him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and pride. She realized that his steady care had not only saved her, but had also helped her discover the power within herself, the ability to face challenges, to trust and to embrace life fully. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fields, Clara explored the ranch with renewed energy. She tended to the animals with confidence, checked the fences, and even ventured to a nearby stream, letting the cool water brush against her hands and feet. Each task, each step reinforced her sense of independence and belonging. She no longer needed to fear the world. She had learned to meet it with courage and grace. Evening approached, and the sky transformed into a canvas of amber, pink, and violet. Clara and Ethan prepared a simple meal over the fire, the aroma of roasted vegetables and fresh bread filling the air. They ate side by side, sharing quiet conversation and laughter. The bond between them was no longer just one of rescue. It was companionship built on mutual respect and understanding, a connection that was steady, kind, and enduring. As night fell, stars began to twinkle above, mirrored by the glistening dew on the fields. Clara sat outside her cabin, breathing deeply, feeling a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. She was no longer a girl defined by fear or betrayal. She was strong, capable, and surrounded by kindness. She glanced at Ethan, who was tending the horses nearby, and realized that life on the ranch had given her a true home, a place where trust, courage, and hope could flourish. In that quiet moment, Clara allowed herself to imagine the future. She could see days filled with learning, exploration, and joy, evenings with calm and companionship, and years of growth and happiness on this land that had become her sanctuary. The past, with its shadows and pain, could no longer touch her. She was free, empowered, and ready to embrace each new day with confidence. And so, under the wide-open sky, with the ranch stretching endlessly around her, Clara took a deep breath and smiled. The journey from fear to trust, from despair to courage, had led her here to a life full of possibility, hope, and love. A new beginning, bright and unshakable, awaited her, and she stepped forward with a heart full of courage, ready to embrace the future she had claimed.